Well, I think we can get started. My name is Brian Deerwachter, and welcome to Interior Painting. I'm a Program Specialist 2 with Bloomington HRA, and I'm here to introduce our speaker tonight. And I just want to touch on a couple of rehab programs that the Housing Authority administers, that I personally work on. We have rehab loans available to residents of Bloomington. They're these brochures, so if you didn't grab one, please do. If you're interested in making home improvements through the use of financing we call a deferred loan, you can make home improvements and not have to make payments on the loan that you use to make those improvements until you sell your home, transfer title, or no longer live in that home. At that point, the loans become due and payable. Great way to finance home improvements, and if you need any more information, look at our website, City of Bloomington, code word or keyword HRA or housing rehab. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eric Morrud. He's with TruNorth Painting. Eric, you've been there with your company?
13 years.
13 years, a long time. He's got a lot of experience, and I think you'll enjoy his presentation. At the conclusion, if you have questions for any of us, we'll be hanging around after. And thank you for coming.
All right. So if I would have known there was this many people, I would have practiced about 5 extra times. So just a little nervous. So I'm going to start with a very quick history lesson. And I guess it goes something like there's, well, thousands of years before thousands of roofers, siders, and people looking for hail damage descended upon Bloomington, there was painters. In fact, painters have been around for thousands of years, ever before someone ever put a nail in a board. And we take this really seriously because, think about people's homes. It's one of the easiest way to get instant gratification and easiest way to improve the value of your home. And most of the time you can do it yourself. And I mean, if you think about it, the cavemen built their homes, and the next thing they did wasn't put an awning up, they painted it. So we take that very, very serious. But at the same time, I don't have a pipeline to painting heaven. There are so many ways to do this. This is just a collection. And in fact, even within our company, I've got 60 painters, and we don't agree on all this stuff either. But this is kind of a collection of the things that I've learned that the majority of our guys do, and some tips along the way that hopefully you guys can, whether you're a seasoned do-it-yourselfer or new at this, there's going to be some basics that hopefully you can walk away with, and you can paint the interior, especially perhaps more professionally, is my goal. So, like Brian said, my name is Eric Morrud. I'm from TruNorth Painting. We're a contracting company in the Twin Cities, and we've got 3 wonderful estimators and a bunch of office staff that work pretty hard to create a great experience for people. Let's see here. So, and we're going to cover a lot, and a lot of the stuff. But if you have a question that we haven't really touched upon yet, I would ask that you just save it till the end. However, if we're on a topic and we've kind of moved on to the next one, and I didn't get to your question on that, that would be a good time to ask that question. Does that make sense? Okay. So, some of the things we're going to cover. I'm going to start with how to pick interior paint. So, first of all, paint comes, the basics of paint. You've got latex or you have oil. The majority, and I would say probably 98% of all painting done now today is done with latex. There really is, in fact, if you're a new to painting or not an experienced painter, I would not recommend using oil because oil is extremely difficult to control. When you think like beautiful enameled woodwork, it's usually oil. But it's also usually done by a professional because it looks, the frustrating part is you do it, and this is something my guys are way better at me, way better than I am, but you do the door, it's perfect. You do the baseboard, it's perfect, and a half an hour later, it's perfect, and then an hour later, it's perfect, and then the next morning, there's lines everywhere because the oil dries extremely slow. So that's why it's easier for an amateur, and a professional for that matter, to use latex. The downside to the latex is you got to keep it, you kind of have to finish it. So if you ever had somebody partner with you in a project and they take 2 weeks to paint a room, that's a bad idea. Some people know what I'm talking about, or a year for that matter. Don't put up the tape. and then wait a week. But I'm going to teach you how to do it fast, and the faster you do it, the better it's going to be. So how to pick out paint. You know, the best thing you can do is, well, you can take a picture of your room, of course, but take it to a professional paint store. I tend to like Hirschfield's and Sherwin-Williams. People ask me all the time, who do you prefer? They're the same. There are some things that Sherwin-Williams does better, and there's some things that Hirschfield's does better. Quality, you know, for the majority of the paints, the quality is about the same. The price is about the same. They all can do any color that you want. So I would say take your project to them and say, I need some help. And they're obviously very, very knowledgeable as to help you pick the right paint. And then a lot of it comes down to cost. Typically, the more you spend, the more durable the paint's going to be. It's not necessarily going to look better, though. Because you take, for example, the best ceiling paint in the world is the cheapest stuff you can buy. It's like $9 a gallon. We buy thousands of gallons of it because it's dead. It's dead flat. There's no sheen to it. And do you want to see your ceiling? No. You want to not see your ceiling. So therefore, we use really cheap paint because that's what you want. Now, when it comes to your walls, for example, if I want to see every flaw in a wall, I'm going to make it shiny, just like a car. You don't want to do that, because then you're going to see every flaw in your wall, and it's going to drive you crazy. So I would recommend like a flat or an eggshell. Some companies call it low sheen. They're kind of synonymous. So if I break it down, you got, would it help if I wrote this stuff down, or should I just keep cruising and you guys take notes?
Write it down.
Write it down here? Okay, all right, sounds good. So we go low sheen, right? Like this is low sheen. If I have a mildly dirty hand, you can see the people who have touched this wall, every single one of them. You know, there, now that's me. So this is low sheen. The nice thing about a low sheen is you can touch it up. Forget about washing it, ain't gonna happen. In fact, I mean, white is white, so it's not gonna matter. But let's say this is red, and it's flat, and I wipe it with anything, it's no longer red, it's kind of red. And then the more aggressively you get, the more paint you're going to take off because it has no protection. Think about a real shiny red car. It's shiny for a reason. It reflects the sunlight. It keeps the water off. So as you go up in sheen, you got flat. Some people call it low sheen. Even Sherwin-Williams will have one product low sheen, the other one's eggshell. Some products are available in eggshell, but not in satin, and then vice versa. And then you have satin is typically the next one. Ironically, some eggshells are shinier than satins. Then you got like a semi-gloss. Then you got gloss. Then you have high gloss. I would say doors and trim. Doors and trim, or perhaps a kitchen, a bathroom, somewhere where there's going to be a lot of moisture. You might need the durability. So satin, I don't like walls any higher than satin. That's a personal preference because you're just going to see, it's going to cause, you're going to see every imperfection. We look even more professional when people choose flat, you know. So it's just harder to control. It's harder to get a great sheen because you see every movement because there's different light reflections. And then for walls, typically I'm going flat or low sheen. So the nice thing is as you go up in quality, so for example, oh, and by the way, at the end, I'm going to teach you how to get paint at my cost. So you like that. And so do we, actually. So as you go up in quality of the paint, so for example, you start spending $30, $40, you go up, you can get a more durable paint, perhaps for a lower sheen. So let's say I'm buying a $16 gallon of paint. The durability on that flat is not the same as that $40 a gallon flat. Does that make sense? The higher in sheen, no? So you can get away with a flat paint that might cost $50 a gallon if you want flat, but you want durability. Otherwise, if you want to pay less, then you're going to, but you still want durability, then you can go with eggshell. So, for example, so like we might be painting a hospital. They don't want to pay 40 bucks a gallon. They're not going to pay 40 bucks a gallon. Our commercial clients, they need durability. So we buy an $18 a gallon of paint, which they're fine with, but we're going to buy an eggshell. Because the durability matters more, the cost matters more. They're not necessarily going to pick apart the wall, though, right? They don't have, you're not going to sit in your living room going, honey, you really aren't very good at painting. You're going to be fine with it because you're walking down the hallway. So you just have to decide what you want to spend. Does anybody have any questions about kind of that basic paint terminology? Because we might come back to that. Typically when you see the enamels with the oils, they're way up here, gloss. But now you can get those enamels in latex too. So a question that we get all the time. Oh, yes?
So for the flat, you said pretty much like if you want to wipe it down, it'll kind of like the color will kind of fade away.
I would plan on not wiping it.
So okay, so with the gloss, like if you want to,
you can wipe that.
You can wipe it. Okay.
It's more durable, so you can get water on it because it's just like a shiny car. You can wax. You keep waxing the car, it keeps the water off.
So what happens if you do accidentally get water on the flat?
Okay, great question. So with the flat, the cool thing is you can touch it up. All right, so you paint, like this room is all white and it's all flat. So all I got to do is I can actually just do this part, and you probably wouldn't notice it as long as it's from the same gallon, same color, same painter, same nap roller, which we'll get to. But flat, you could touch it up. So like you'll see, like in a hotel, we're doing this hotel in Rochester. They want flat, and we told Sherwin-Williams 3 times that we want flat, and they're like, "Are you sure?" "Yes." "Are you sure?" "Yes." We would like 400 gallons of flat paint, and they're like, "Well, if you buy it and you don't like it, we're not taking it back." I'm like, they want flat. This particular hotel will send a maintenance person around to touch it up. Whenever it's, somebody goes like this, they'll send a guy and they go, and it's fixed. Some companies, they want it more durable because when they have a mark on their wall, they're going to go and they're going to wipe it off. So you have to, a lot of homeowners say, well, I want to be able to wash it. Well, when was the last time you washed your walls? I've never washed my walls. How long have you lived in the home? 15 years. Probably not going to wash this one either. So, like maybe you should go with, so kind of think about what really matters to you, for that. So there's plenty of chairs here. Brian, can you help this lady get a chair just so, because I'm going to talk for hours. Like we're just getting warmed up. Okay, was there any other questions on that? Yes?
So it sounds like flat paint is the best for a bedroom?
Depends on the age of the occupant, okay? So flat, because you're not going to mark up the walls, right? Grandkids, no, bad, right? So think about it. So you may have in your bedroom, all right, let's say you got little kids, right? You probably want a very durable product, low sheen or satin, because it's going to get messed up. They're going to mark up the walls, or hallways, right? You may want to have a different paint there than you do in your own bedroom, or the nursery, or the kitchen versus the living room. There might be the formal living room. There might be the, or the office. You can decide what the abuse level is on those walls, and pick a paint out according to that. So something to keep in mind.
Do you have to sand a low sheen to repaint?
Sometimes. That's a great question. Typically, if you're going low sheen over low sheen, you're okay. If you're going satin over satin, you're okay. This takes a trained eye, though, because if it's really shiny, you kind of look at it and you go, well, that's really shiny. What I would do, and what I would have my guys do, is we would just scuff sand it. And when I say scuff sand, I'm talking like, I'm talking really light, just something to knock down the sheen. If it's interior, though, I would use sanding, not a chemical. There's different ways to knock down sheen. That's a great question. A lot of the failures that we see on the exterior of houses, it's peeling like crazy. Why is it peeling? And then you look at the last paint job, and you've got flat over satin. Well, if you think about satin and semi-gloss, it reflects sunlight, water, and paint is water. Paint is an acrylic waterborne product. So it's actually repelling itself. So, however, flat is typically, there's so many variables. I don't know if I should go down this road. But yes, if it's really high sheen, you do want to knock it down a little bit so that it's open and ready for another paint. But it's not reason to not paint. You know, you can easily knock it down. And like when I say sand a room, we would sand this room in about 30 minutes. So it's not, well, we would do it with a pole, you know. There's tricks, and I will teach you those. So it's nothing amazing. You just, you know, all the way down, and you get the whole thing done in a half hour. Okay, so a lot of questions I get are about colors. Like, how come it takes 8 coats to get the red, or I can't get the white to stop coming through the red, or I can't get the white to cover the red. So reds, yellows, blues, anything with a ton of tint. When you think about a paint can, all right, let's say you got, this is your base. We'll just call this latex. It's not very technical. If there's any engineers in the room, I know it's not technically latex, but we'll just call it the solvent, right? In oil, it would be oil, but waterborne, it's going to be waterborne. Okay, so you got one paint can. If you got, and there's other additives to paint, but most importantly, there's tint. So to exaggerate the point, in a red gallon of paint, you buy this gallon of paint from Sherwin-Williams or Home Depot or Hirschfield's, and you want red. There's this much tint. Not exactly, but that much tint. Okay, and in a gallon, another gallon, let's say it's gray. It's got this much base and this much tint. You got, what are the 4 parts of paint? Boy, my guys would yell at me if I can't remember this right now, but tint, additives, like mildewcide, stuff like that, the solvent, and then the resin. So resin controls the sheen. The more resin, the more shine. So okay, my point is, so this is gray. All of this other stuff except the tint is what actually makes something cover. So therefore, if you want to go red, go to gray first, because gray is kind of like this neutral super color. In fact, there's what's called gray primer. So just save yourself a step. So like I can take something typically and go red in 3 coats or yellow in 3 coats, because the white is going to bleed through unless you kind of kill it with a neutral color or a primer or a blocking primer. But I mean, you could, I'll never forget the first time I learned that, because I learned it the hard way. When something wants to bleed, it's way more powerful than what you're putting over the top. So you have to kill it with a gray primer. But that's something that people ask about all the time. Does anybody want me to? I'm looking at this and then going, wow, this is the most boring subject that you're going to talk about today. I'll move on.
When I want to go gray
Yep.
first and then
Correct.
change the color.
Yep. Oh, and another note: if you want to do bold colors, go with a higher quality paint, because it will save you. It'll save you time. So like for example, you may want to buy the best of the best for that pink or that red, because ironically, a lot of the medium levels don't do accent colors for whatever reason. Well, because it's expensive. They have to have another base. So they'll go put you in a cheap line, like color accent, something that doesn't really work. So you'll be doing like 4 or 5 coats, no bueno. Does that answer your question? Yeah. So yes.
So you mean if you have some gray paint left over, that's what you can use as a primer for
You could.
any dark color you want
Yep.
to cover up before you paint?
You could, and yes. So you can use that, depending on how dark it is. But I mean, relatively speaking, yes. You typically. One thing that you'll also, people ask, well, don't you prime the walls first? No, not interior. You do not need to, you should prime. We don't do a lot of new construction. My understanding is those guys don't prime anything. And they get away with it because there's no sun, there's no rain, there's no snow, it's not coming off. I mean, unless you gouge it, it's fine. But when you're priming walls, like let's say you got a brand new house and you got brand new sheetrock, you can use a primer, but a interior primer is just cheap paint. So you can just use another coat of good paint. But when you're doing something new, like you got brand new drywall, you want to do that first coat, and then you want to sand it. Because what's going to happen is that paint is going to lift some of the fibers. And then it's going to kind of look furry. So you want to knock that down and sand that if you're doing something brand new. You also want to cover up the mud, so you do a coat first. But so use old paint up is what you can use as your primer. There's no special, I mean, they call it interior primer, but it's paint. Like,
What, Zinsser, even Zinsser?
it's great, but it's about $15 more than cheap paint, you know. So like, for example, drywall primer is really cheap paint. It's like $9-10 a gallon. We would rather just use CHB, something that we could put a tint in. CHB is a really cheap ceiling paint, or Sherwin-Williams, it's called CHB. That's what they recommend. At Herschel's, it's called ceiling paint. Really clever name. It's a little easier to pick out. But CHB is the Sherwin-Williams one that I'd recommend for ceilings, or for a cheap paint that you just want to use as a primer, because it only comes in flat in this market. How do you store paint? Paint will last quite a while as long as you put the lid on and you put it on solid. But you want to make sure that you're not, like, for example, a lot of people, when they don't finish, well, I'm going to push you to I'm going to teach you how you can finish a room in one day. We don't want to, you don't want this thing extending longer than you want. But a lot of people will, I'll tell you what, let's go into, we're going to paint this wall, okay? I highly recommend a liner, because they're $1 to $2, and then you can throw them away, and you don't have to clean this out. Keep this, reuse this, or sorry, keep this, reuse it, throw this away. I mean, you know, I'm from North Dakota, and I got a lot of relatives that probably would save everything we can, but I don't tell them that I throw things away. So, all right, so you got this for interior, all right? Put your liner down, put your paint in, but don't put too much paint. Like, I mean, you just want it to kind of this fill level right here. You want to get your roller in there and then bring it up so you're evenly taking it off the roller. More paint is not necessarily better. You want an even amount of paint on your nap. Okay, so this is called a nap. Or a roller cover. I'm sure there's a lot of different, I'm probably moving around a little fast for you. I'm sorry. All right, so, okay, so when we're talking interior, you can see this one. This one's bigger, and this one's bigger yet. You can use any one of these three. Here's the difference. This is, I believe, a 1/2 inch nap, which is, it doesn't look like a 1/2 inch, but, because they're all the same size in the middle. But, so this is going to hold less paint. It's going to give you a finer finish. And it's going to have smaller stipple. This is called stipple, when you have the little tiny raised bumps. So when you have something small like this, smaller stipple. It's going to hide less imperfections. I would say the most common would be a 1/2 inch or a 3/8. That would be this, because we can actually get more paint on it, and we can move. Instead of being able to get this much done, we can get this much done. And the difference in stipple isn't that. I can tell the difference, but most people, unless you do this every day, you're not going to tell the difference usually. Then the bigger one. Now, the bigger ones are typically safe for the outdoors, but this is actually an interior 3/4 inch nap. You can see this bad boy can hold a lot of paint. And but when you put it on, there would be a noticeable difference between these two, visually, because when this thing rolls down, it's going to have some, it's going to leave a stipple that has a larger pattern, so you'll be able to see that. So, all right, so now we got our paint in the roller.
Quality of roller.
Quality of roller, great question. Personal preference. If you are, like my relatives, buy a high quality roller and wash it out. If you're like me, buy a cheap one and throw it away. Because the difference is how long they're going to last, really. I mean, this would be a great question for a paint store, and you may want to just tell them, yeah, I'm really picky. They're going to tell you what to buy. Or, I'm really not that picky. It's kind of, you can pay anywhere from $3 to $12 a roller. Unless you're good at cleaning out a roller, which, some of our guys do. They clean out everything. They're really real stewards of their rollers. So they, but I you know, that's their time. You know, I guess I value my time, so I don't want to. It's really hard to clean them up well enough to where they're going to outperform a brand new cheap one. You know what I'm saying? All right, so I just buy the cheap ones. Buy in big 6-packs, and there are different rollers for different types of paint though too. So, you know, when you're buying your paint, ask them which roller works with this, and then usually knock it down one price level because they're going to sell you the most expensive stuff they can. I would too, you know, if I was them, because they make a lot of money. They make, you know what, they don't make, okay, so if you go in there, they make a lot of money on paint. They make a lot of money on sundries. By the end of this program, I'm going to teach you so you can go into the paint store and they won't make anything on your paint. They're going to make something on these though. So they're going to put you in, you know, they're going to put you in a nice roller, but I buy the cheap ones. Works fine for me. But then again, I paint once a year, and my guys paint, well, we try to get them painted 365 days a year, but sometimes that doesn't happen. Rain. Anyway, all right, so we got this thing on there. I would highly recommend investing in something to extend your arms. So, and a good actual roller, because if you buy the cheap ones, they really don't last. And they can break on the first time, you know, because it depends on how much pressure you put on there. But, you know, I'd hate, you know, if you're sitting there, right, and you're doing a great job, and all of a sudden this thing just turns, paint goes that way, I mean, it's just not worth it. So I would buy a good roller. That's an investment. Totally different. All right, so this is what you paid big money to come here. This is the stuff, right? So you get your roller in there. Make sure it's really good and wet, right? And then take it off for the first time. You know, get it. You know, take as much off as you can. Then do it again. Like, you really want to get it saturated all the way down to the core. Another thing that I always did is I'd wet the roller too. I'd like just kind of put a little bit of water on it, just to kind of, it opens it up a little bit. And then the other thing I do too, it's all coming back to me. Take tape before you wet it, wrap the whole thing, okay? And then you're going to take it off and you're going to see the tape is full of fuzz. I'd rather have the fuzz on the tape than the fuzz on the wall. Technical term, that's called a booger. Paint booger. Look it up. It's real. It's legit. All right. So now you've got the tape on there. You've wrapped. You can do that twice if you want. It kind of depends on how long you want to stall. And then the real work begins. So you get it a little bit wet. It just tends to take the paint better, because remember, the paint you're going to be using most likely is water at its core. So, all right. So you get your paint off there. Now you got a good nap roller. It's not dripping. Do not let it. You know. You want to get to the wall soon, but it shouldn't be like dripping, all the way to the wall. Before we put paint on the wall, we're going to have drop cloths, okay? Even the professionals, well, not all professionals use drop cloths all the time. We make mistakes. So does everybody else. But some guys think they can do this without drop cloths. I'm pretty picky. I put a drop cloth down. I would highly recommend a drop cloth. A lot of people will use bed sheets, okay? Bed sheets don't hold paint. Like, not a good idea. Canvas drop cloths, better. But what you really, really want to be safe is butyl. It's B-U-T-Y-L, butyl drop cloths. And if you forget that term, just tell the paint store that you need a drop cloth that isn't going to allow something to drip through. So basically, it's like a canvas drop cloth with a plastic underneath. That's what you want to use for interior only, not exterior, because the exterior will tear that off on the bottom. It's called butyl. All right, so we got our drop cloth now. We'll get back to taping since we're kind of on a roll here with this roller. I'm really excited to put this fake paint on the wall. You start with a W or an M. Kind of depends if your name starts with M, like mine. Morud, I would start it with an M, but there's other people start with a W. So you go here. You got this big M. Boom. Boom, boom, right? Then you go W. You just invert it, right? Okay. You got a lot of paint on the wall now. Now you got to smooth it out. This is how I do it. Again, every one of my painters has the pipeline to the truth. I don't argue with them. I just want it to look good when it's done. As long as they can do that, it's fine. This is how I was taught. This is how a lot of my guys do it. They go down. Again, not applying pressure. Like you can really squeeze paint out of there if you want. Don't do that. Like let the roller do its job. But anyway, so you're up here. You get your M, you got your W, you got lots of paint. You may even go back for a little more paint, you know, if you need it. You can tell when it's screaming because you can kind of hear it go, you know, you can kind of hear that it's not the same as it was the first time. So now you go down, you go up, okay? Then you go to the halfway, right? So you got, right, you see what I'm saying? Like halfway on the roller, down, up. By the way, this is the whole wall. You know, let's pretend like we're doing the whole thing. It's just too tall for me. And then you do the same thing, down, up, to the point where you might get the screeching. You have to kind of decide as you go if you need to put more paint on or not. And it also depends on your roller too. Then finish one way. Down, halfway, down, halfway, down, and so on. When you're doing interior painting, there's very few professionals I've ever come across that do one coat. Even if you're going white on white, black on black, it doesn't matter. Like because it's also about the stipple. It's about the sheen, even if it's flat. It just doesn't, interior paint doesn't cover like exterior paint. So you want to do 2 coats no matter what. So you do your first, you might not cut in both coats. There are people who believe you should roll first, then cut in. I am not. The majority of professionals I know, they cut the room first, wall by wall. So I'm going to cutting means brushing it in. You're cutting the trim line. You just want to make sure that you at least cut it to a comfortable amount you can roll to, right? So let's say you got it to here, right? You're going to cut the ceiling, because if you go too short, then all of a sudden you're going to try to roll it, and then what are you going to do? You're going to hit the ceiling. I've seen a lot of ceilings painted by people, and then we fix it. So, yeah, we cut first. Yep. Well, there are, you know what's weird? There are some paint that's like $75 a gallon. Benjamin Moore Aura is one of them. Sherwin-Williams came out with one called Emerald. I haven't tested it. It just came out last year. But Aura, it's kind of amazing. We did these steak and shakes in Chicago, and we did 2 coats of like crazy bright red over white. And it covered pretty dang well. I mean, you could kind of see the white, but you're talking about the most difficult color to do, but it was really, really expensive paint. The reason why I brought it up is they say you don't have to cut it twice, no matter what. Even if you're going blue, red, doesn't matter. So there are, and they say cut second. That's why. That's the only paint I know, because they say it actually blends better if you cut it after you roll it. But that's the only product. I just want to put that disclaimer out there. Benjamin Aura, yeah.
What does cut first mean?
Oh, sure, great question. Cutting is like cutting in the trim. So you're using your brush to cut the wall from the ceiling, because you obviously can't get to that edge with your roller. So you got to use the brush, and I'll give you some techniques on how to do that really well, because obviously people struggle with that too when you don't do it every day. Oops. Yeah.
I also want to ask the question: what is the importance of doing like the M first and then the W? Because I always thought you just do up and down, up and down.
It's a way to get paint on evenly. Okay. It's kind of fun. I don't know. Like I don't know if there's a real scientific reason for it. Okay. It was the way I was taught. It's the way a lot of my guys do it. You know, because you're spreading out paint and then you're kind of filling it in. So yeah, you're still doing, I mean, in a way it's better to put more light coats on than it is to just do the down and up and do it all in one pass. Because you want to build light layers for an interior. So I said you got to do 2 coats, but you can do those 2 coats usually within an hour of them. I mean, they dry pretty quick. Paint actually takes about 30 days to cure, even on the inside. But it's dry to the touch in like 2 hours. Depends on the humidity, depends on the, you know, the temperature, of course. If it's really, really humid and you don't have air conditioning, your paint isn't going to work very well. So like if it's really hot out right now, bad idea. It's got to be, because the walls, even though you can't see it, there's a little bit of moisture on those walls. So, all right, so you cut the room, and I'm going to teach you how to cut the room. You cut this wall, then you roll this wall, and then you're done. You could cut the next wall, roll it, and then you're done. And when you start using something fast and you're not up the ladder, down the ladder, up the ladder, down the ladder, you're going to paint pretty fast. And it goes a lot faster once you kind of get the hang of it. Is there any questions about that? It's so simple. Like, I don't feel like I can keep, I'm like, is that it? Like, that's what makes us a professional?
You said
Yeah.
you cut first.
Yes.
Okay. What do you do to not hit the ceiling
With the roller?
with the cutting?
I'm going to teach you that on how I do it. Well, first of all, practice. I mean, everybody cannot hit this. Everyone has the ability to not hit the ceiling at a certain pace. The more you do it, the faster you get. Some people are better at it to begin with. Just the hand-eye coordination. They can, it's, I don't paint very often, but my guys are just amazed when they see how quickly I can cut something. It's just something I've always been good at. I can cut the door, I can cut a window. Just really, it's just always been easy for me.
It was never painted before. The cutting would probably be slow.
It would be. It's better to go slow than put paint on the ceiling. Yep. And I'll kind of show you how to put paint on with a brush too. I just want to make sure. Is there anything I'm leaving out on rolling? Because it seems like, well, that's it. Yeah.
You said that you should watch out for days that are really hot and humid. What about in the winter? Is there concerns with the weather?
No, because I would assume it's not freezing in your house. So the answer is yes. If it's, because this does happen. When people move into a new house and they don't have the heat on, I turn the heat on to paint the house. Interior paints can go down to about 55 degrees. But from a moisture perspective, I've never really heard of any failures as a result.
Okay. And is it a better idea to crack a window in the winter or not?
I wouldn't worry about it. Yeah, no, because then actually you're going to have you could have a real strong moisture change. We painted a school one time. We did the exact same thing on all 4 walls. Then one wall peeled. Yes, our stuff fails every once in a while. Like it's part of painting. Doesn't happen very often, thank God. But what it was is, and it was perfect for the whole 9 months. Then as soon as it went from like 30 degrees down to 20 below, long after it had cured, the paint just popped off because it was it was a stone. It was a mason. What was it? It wasn't block. Tilt up. So it was concrete. And what happened is there was just, if you think about a gymnasium, there's really no, real moisture control in a gymnasium, and it just sucked the moisture, and the difference between the outside of the wall and the inside of the wall was so, inside it was like probably 50 degrees, outside was negative 20, and it just pushed the moisture, it popped it right off. So we fixed it with some special products that won't do that. So to answer your question, it could happen in a house where there's perhaps like stucco or like plaster, right? So if you have plaster and it's really cold outside and there isn't great insulation on an older house, yeah, it could actually happen, but very rare. I've never seen a failure. In fact, out of 8,000 paint jobs, I've had one interior failure and it wasn't my fault. Wallpaper. Yeah.
Any tricks on rolling a ceiling?
Great question. I don't even know if that was, I've completely lost my script anyway, so great question. I don't know if you're gonna like this one though. Okay, so depends on what, in general, on a ceiling, you wanna go this way and this way on the same pass. All right, so you're rolling this way, for like say 4x4 square, do the same square again. Because you don't want to see huge runs in a ceiling. It doesn't really matter if it's just a bedroom, but if it's like a real long hallway, you can see the pattern. You want to use a really low, real small nap roller. So if the popcorn is very, very popular. If it's flat ceiling or a knockdown ceiling, it really doesn't matter. Popcorn, which is extremely popular, is a total different ball of wax. can of beans, something like that. So if the popcorn has never been painted before, which usually it hasn't, you can't really roll it with a latex paint because popcorn is like basically air, CO2, air, and not a dry roller. We do it, but I just know how to bit it, sorry. It's air, mud, and water, right? So and it's kind of got a dryness to it. So when the latex or the waterborne paint hits it, the water activates the dry aspect of the popcorn, and then it falls down, or it comes right off on your roller. Very, very common, extremely frustrating. So if you want to paint your popcorn ceiling, and you're going to roll it, you're going to need to do an oil first, and that's going to stink the whole family out because it's going to reek. There's no way around it because the oil won't react to the thing. Yes?
How can you tell if it's been painted or not?
If you can crush it with your finger. Pick a
Crush it with your finger, it's not been painted?
likely that it has not been painted. Yep, so you go up there and it's like real air, you can just kind of pop it off. If it's hard, it's been painted. Then you just paint right over it. I hate to plug, but I'd call TruNorth Painting and have them spray your ceiling. So ceilings are, if they've been painted before, no problem. If they're popcorn, they've never been painted, you really want to have a professional spray it. Because it's not worth doing the oil. It could change your life. So, you had a question, yes?
If I'm going to paint a normal wall, you want me to go from the floor to the ceiling? Not when I do it.
I go top down. I finish top down. I go like this. I finish from the top to the bottom. Oh yeah, from the ceiling all the way down. I don't do this halfway, then halfway. No way.
That's a girl then.
Huh?
I'm a girl then.
Oh, you do the half and the half?
What's it easier?
Well, okay, but here's the problem, my friend. If we're standing here, I see that big line. So you can do it that way if you want. But I'm teaching you how to paint like a professional, girl. Like, this is the real deal here. So I go top to bottom all the way. So yes.
If you've had your ceiling sprayed before and it has, I don't know, little things of glass in it or something.
Oh yeah.
Okay, how do you paint it or do something with it to change it?
To get rid of the glass. To get rid of the glass finish. Geez, we typically go right over it and it doesn't seem to be an issue. Now, if it's real prevalent, like you got lots of big shards of glass, which is not usual, you may have to consider a primer coat first. But I'm pretty sure we just go right over it. I've never.
Is it better to just have somebody professionally spray over it?
I would never spray your house yourself, ever. Like we don't spray on the inside of a house except for ceilings. We never spray. In fact, even in the hospital, we don't even spray the inside. New construction we would, but we don't do a lot of new construction. Yeah.
What do I do to get rid of all of that rough stuff? I mean, we've got, all the ceilings were sprayed, okay?
With that, like kind of that.
Back,
Yep.
yeah, throughout all the bedrooms and everything except the kitchen. And I want to change, I want a new white ceiling. What do I do?
Are you trying to get rid of the texture?
Maybe.
Okay, if you want to get rid of the texture, then you got to scrape it off by hand.
Okay, but if you don't want to get rid of the texture.
If you don't want to get rid of the texture, I think you can probably just spray right over it. If you really are concerned about it, it's not that hard to just switch out have a primer first. It's almost impossible for me to give you an accurate diagnosis without seeing it though.
It's been there, I think, 35 years.
Yeah.
And I haven't changed, we haven't done anything with the ceiling because we didn't know what to do.
Do you need to paint it with oil first so it doesn't come off?
If you're going to roll it, yes. But I wouldn't use oil if you're going to spray it, you just spray with latex. It's fine. Yeah, because you're spraying it and you're not touching it. If you sprayed it and then touch it, it's going to fall right off. But if you overspray, like you put too much paint on there, it'll fall because of the weight of the paint. So, was there any other questions? You?
Initial W on the wall, what rough dimensions? Like
Depends on the roller. Oh, you know what? It's really just reachable for me. Like it's not that scientific. Sorry. It depends on how tall the wall is, I suppose, and how far the paint will go. But you'll figure it out in your first pass. Okay. But it's usually in reachable. You know, it's not like a huge W. You know, it's enough where there's only slivers of non-painted wall. Put it that way. You know, because then otherwise you got too much gap to fill going up and down. Then you can actually have crosses. So, yes.
So when you start at the top and pull down to the bottom, you actually pick your roller up and go to halfway.
On the very last pass.
So you make your W, your M and your W,
Yep.
and you're going to go from the top down.
I'm going to redo it because I think I'm seeing some confusion. Okay, so here's let me redo this from start to finish. You got your paint, you got your M, you got your W, then you go up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, and that's usually when people quit. They're like, oh, that looks amazing. I've always taken it one more pass, finish, down, half, finish, down. So you're always finishing. Because the M and the W isn't enough to get it even.
You re-wet your roller before you do your finish time on it?
I would say the majority of the time, yes, but not always. If I feel like I've got enough on there, I might finish it. Well, actually, that actually becomes less about the roller or the nap. It becomes, I look at the wall and I go, oh crap, I got too much paint on there. I'm just going to finish it. Right? But if I look at it, it's a little dry, and you can see by the sheen, because even flat paint is going to have a sheen because it's wet. So I look at it and I go, ooh, I need more paint, or no, I can't put more paint on that. It's going to run like crazy. So I go by the wall, not by the roller. Yeah.
When you're going up and down, are you going all the way down to the floor?
Yes. Yep. And so the more you do this, the better you get at getting it, because you really want to go as close as you can without touching the floor. Actually, you don't have to worry about it on the floor because you got tape. But on the ceiling, you just got to be careful, you know.
One more question.
Yep.
Are you going to be talking about how to prepare the wall, like taking the pictures that you have on?
Ooh, I don't know if I was going to cover that. I might leave that to last, because I want to get to cover to a couple things about tape. Real easy stuff. We'll get to that. It might be a short one, so. Okay, so you got. You know, there's good, better, best of just the standard white paint tape, good, better, best of different, blue types, and there's frog tape. I've never used frog tape in my life, but the guys swear by it. I don't know. I don't like paying for it, The majority of the time we're using just standard, they call it Intertape, Intertape. You can buy it at Herschel's, you can buy it at Sherwin-Williams. They just like that. The majority of the guys like that. Interior, exterior, doesn't matter. The downside, you can't leave it on there too long. It's great. It's probably half the price. It might even be a fourth of the price of the blue tape in your new discount, that is. So I use 1.5 inches because it catches more. It catches more of the not stipple, but the splatter as it comes off the roller. Because I don't care who you are, you're gonna have splatter. It's just it has to come off the roller somewhere as it's rolling off of there. So I use this. If you know you're not gonna finish, I go blue tape. This the frog tape is supposed to be really, really good for amateurs because it's got the sealing ability where it keeps the paint from bleeding. Okay, here's the deal. I do that with this tape. This is wax. There's wax in the tape for whatever reason. When you put that tape on, right? You have that edge. I run a putty knife and I go whack, and I go pretty hard, but not enough to tear the tape. And what that seems to do is it melts the tape and creates a small bond, a tighter bond between this and the tape. And I don't typically have bleed through. So I don't know. I've been fine with this. I don't buy the blue tape. My guys buy it, but I don't. Some of the guys love the frog tape. Yes?
You said you can't leave it very long. What does that mean?
Oh, sorry. I have seen this on for weeks, no problem. I painted my trainer guy. He had it on for 6 months. It had all come off. But, you know, in some places where it was still sticking, it stayed on. You know, like I took it off and then you see the little resin. So it'll come off. It's just you may have to work to get it all off completely. They say on here how long it's supposed to last, but I wouldn't leave this on for more than 3 days. I wouldn't leave this on for more than 5 days. And if it takes longer than 5 days to paint the room, shame on you. So, so it's all kind of all relative. Call TruNorth Painting if it takes longer than a week, or somebody else probably will in your house. So, okay, so.
How long should you leave the paint dry before you take the tape off?
Oh, great question. At least 3 hours. I know our guys will probably take it off an hour after it's done, but they're good at it. You know, so they know, you know. If you see, sometimes the paint will kind of gather at the tape line. Don't take it off at that point, because you know as soon as you pull that thing, it's going to leak right underneath. I give it more time just to be safe, because one of the reasons is you're probably going to put more paint on than you need to. So there's probably going to be more on the edge than perhaps what we might go by. I would just kind of have to just use your best judgment. So to prepare a wall, I'm going to give you the short game to it. If you're going to take the picture off, and you're going to put the picture up in the exact same spot, leave the nail in until you're actually going to paint. Then take the nail out, paint it, and then put the nail right back. Because why fill it, right? It's going right back in the same spot. If you are going to put up new stuff, or you're not going to use that hole again, take the hole off, take a tiny bit of spackle, you know, as little as you can, by the way, and then you put it on with a putty knife. You got to let it dry. Look at the spackle that you buy. Sometimes it's like 15 minutes, sometimes it's 30 minutes. I mean, you'll know based on it coming off or not. The other thing that I would recommend doing, though, is when you got spackle, especially if it's in an eye level spot, if it's down here, it doesn't really matter. But if you're spackling something, you should. I mean, that's a part of preparing a wall. If you got holes or you got damage, don't go crazy on it, and I'll tell you, you'll figure out why in a minute. But you know, let's say it's eye level. I would sand it real good. But remember, this is almost like a brand new surface. It's flat, it's smooth, and this all has stipple. So if we paint right over that, this has got even more stipple, and this just has its first layer of stipple. So now, especially if you're using a high sheen, you're going to see where you did all the spackling. So one way around that is get better at spackling. Two would be to just touch it up real quick. So let's say before you do this wall, you take you might take your brush, just put it on there. Now that's not going to add stipple, but then you may not have your roll. If you have your roller out and it's already wet, yeah, do it with the roller. And then when you come back again, you're already got a little bit on there and then another layer. But it's basically you're priming it, you know, with the actual paint you're going to be using. You could go a little step further and prime it, but it's all a matter of speed. I mean, no matter what, you can still see it depending on how big it is. So sometimes we'll tell customers, you know, they'll have nail pops, and they'll say, I want all of these nail pops removed. And I go, ooh, I like your nail pops a little better than what it's going to look like after we put spackle everywhere. So, I mean, you have to be very careful. It's a judgment call because, you know, think about it. In order to get that nail pop in, unless you're using a ball peen hammer, I mean, you're going to see where this thing was set, or wherever the screw head is, or where, you know, whatever you're using, right? Could be nails, could be screws. And then, you know, if you've got them everywhere eye level and they're only slightly coming out, I would consider leaving them. Now, if they're sticking out, like, you know, yeah, you got to fix them because it looks shoddy. But just, you know, we usually have that discussion with our homeowners going, okay, here's the plus side, here's the downside. How bad do you hate your nail pops? You know, it kind of depends. So just be prepared for that. You want to prime the spackle before you do the whole thing, or else it's just going to help hide it a little bit. Okay, so does that answer your question? Okay. All right, so we got rollers, or we got brushes. Buy good brushes. Medium quality level. I mean, you don't have to buy the top of the top, but they last longer. You see the black china bristle? This is for oil. Like you go, oh wow, this is a really good deal, honey. And it's top of the line for its thing, but it's made for oil. It will not work for latex. This latex brush will not work for oil. It just doesn't hold it because it's designed to adhere to different things. You have so people say, well, how do I pick out a brush? Okay, there's a lot of personal preference to that. I personally, when I'm painting outside, I use a 3.5 inch, which is another 1/2 inch bigger than this, and I use angle. I just have always used angle. It's what I'm comfortable with. People who use a flat, they create their own angle. They just take your brush, hit it, bend it, so now you've got kind of like, you can draw. I mean, I could write your name with it. I mean, you're just kind of creating an edge. So when you're cutting, somebody was asking about ceilings, right? Usually on a ceiling, there's kind of that little edge, right? Where you see where the drywaller may not have done a perfect job, but there's that tiny edge. Use that edge, Take your paintbrush. First of all, you only need paint to about here, but put as much paint as you can handle on a brush. What I mean by that is get to the point where you can dip the brush, turn it like this, and not spill everywhere. Okay? The only reason why is the more paint on the brush that you can control, key word there, is you're going to be able to use it, to paint faster, because you're going to be able to go from here all the way down to here without asking for more paint. But the more paint you can control, the better, the better coverage you're going to have, right? So, but the paint doesn't usually come off it'll come off with gravity, but it really comes out when you bend the brush. So that actually is what makes the paint transfer. So, but follow that line, and it really isn't that tough. Just go as slow as you need to, or as fast as your patience won't allow. I don't know if I said that right, but you know what I mean. That's don't feel like you need to have a 3-inch. Start with a 2.5. Work your way up to a 3. Usually you don't need a 3.5 inch for an interior. It's just not, there's no reason to have that much paint, but I'm a bigger brush guy. 2.5 is pretty common. For trim, you'll probably want something smaller. It just takes longer. Because the other thing you can see is sometimes people do 6 inches at a time because they have such a small brush. And it's like you can see that, But it all depends on how picky you are too. I'm kind of picky, so I have a certain way of doing it. Storing paint. When you're done, see that I just taught you how to be a professional painter. It's that easy, like with the brush. That's all it takes. That and a little practice. A lot of people, because they might be doing the living room with the same color, they don't really want to, they'll cover it in plastic. Our guys do that sometimes. Sometimes they'll put it in the back in the bucket. Some of our guys do that. It just kind of depends. Remember how quickly this stuff dries. 30 minutes, right, on the wall? Well, it's also drying in your bucket. So you're creating tiny little paint chips, boogers, if you will, paint chips in there that are wet. And then if you are going to go overnight, this is a rule for me, period. I just don't do it any other way, is take a screen, hold it over your can. There's smaller ones too, I believe. We used a lot of 5-gallon buckets, and then pour the paint into that. So at least you don't have any of those boogers sitting in and then you start with a brand new liner again. So if you're going to go have lunch, definitely cover it. Take saran wrap, works perfect. If it's really late at night, I might actually take saran wrap and wrap my brush. That'll work too. But I typically don't leave paint out overnight because it's too expensive, it's too important. The paint's the product, The brush I can handle because it's all a matter of cleaning. Roller, I don't save my rollers overnight. I just don't. A lot of guys clean them. That's fine. You can clean them, or you can just throw them away and get a new one. But these are culprits for boogers, big time. Gosh, yeah, go ahead.
On the netting or whatever you call that, do the paint stores have those?
Yes, everything I got here was at a paint store. Yep. There might be something more clever. They probably charge you a lot more than you could probably find this at some other store for some other purpose, and it's a lot cheaper. But yeah, I just buy it from the paint store. Always have a rag on you too. You get that bag of rags or box of rags. Have it on you. You just never know when you need it. You just have it on you. Because the other thing too is, somebody, are painting here, and then, oh crap, I got some paint on the woodwork. Oh, I need to go grab a rag. Oh, and I go walk off, and then you don't realize because you're in a hurry that you got paint on the bottom of your shoes, and then you just tracked all over the carpet. Now you're really screwed because now you got paint on the carpet, paint on here. I would just have a rag on you at all times. I would have, have everything you need, to be a professional. Have everything right there for you. Is there any other questions you guys have? Yeah.
Painting a wall after wallpaper's been removed.
Oh boy. Yeah. This is.
You get all the adhesive off and then really just wash it.
Everyone loves wallpaper. Yeah. All right. So here's the deal on. Great question. We run into it a lot. Okay. So we won't go into how to remove it. Sometimes it comes off really easy, right? Sometimes it doesn't come off at all. Like we can't really bid projects usually because we're like, it could take us an hour to take this much off, or we could take this whole thing off in about an hour. You never know. So once you get the actual paper off, there's usually the sizing, the glue, something left, or it might have ripped the sheetrock. Standard rule of thumb, obviously you might have to do some skim. There's two things you have to do. You have to cover up the glue, usually with a primer, an oil, typically an oil, or I always play it safe. I go with oil. But there are some products that you can use, like stain blocking latexes, but they just don't work as well. That does one purpose, and that provides a surface that the next layer will stick to. The other thing is you got to make sure it's smooth. So you could be skim coating, and skim coating is just a fancy word for putting a lot of spackle on a wall to just smooth it out. So literally you can have a really torn up wall and make it smooth again. It's not plaster. Plaster is completely different. It's a masonry product that's on a wire, actually. Usually, what's interesting is almost all drywallers paint. Almost all painters do a little bit of drywall, but they don't. Plasterers are plasterers. They're a long time after the cavemen and the painters and the carpenters. They don't cross trade. They are like specialists. And don't try to plaster if you're not a plasterer. I don't know if I answered your question though.
That's good.
Yeah.
I have another question.
Sure, go ahead.
Painting paneling.
Okay.
Can you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So if it's wood paneling and it's actual real wood, you have to prime it first because for a couple reasons. Usually it's darker or there's something in the tannins. It might be cedar. That will bleed through. So you're going to want to use an oil, and you're going to want to use a real primer. You can't get away with that use up your old paint trick. It doesn't work. So that's for paneling that is actual wood. You may have to do 2 coats because if it's coming through the primer, it's coming right through the paint too. It'll come through in 20 minutes. Or it might not. It might look, oh, this is beautiful. And then in the wrong light a year later, you go, oh, crap, it's bleeding through. And then it's just going to drive you crazy. So you really want to make sure it's sealed in, just like the wallpaper. If it is paneling that's kind of like that prefab stuff that is like a shiny, I can't remember what they call it, but the paneling that's not wood, that's different. You got to use a bonding primer. You don't need to use oil. You just need to tell the store, I need bonding primer. Because it's all primers do a little bit of everything a primer does, but some are specialized. Like some are better at blocking stain, some are better at adhesion. Like metal, totally different ball of wax. You got to go with, a metal primer to really do a good job with metal. Yeah.
Tricks for corners.
For homeowners? Oh, corners. Oh, don't buy one of those goofy devices. It's like they take longer to figure out how to use than they do to actually just go slower with a brush. Same thing as a ceiling, because, where it really matters is when you got one color and another color, right? Is that what you're thinking? Red, blue, or whatever, Same thing, right? If you guys, hopefully you guys can see this corner, right? Same thing, right? You get your paint, maybe a little less when you're getting started, and you start at the top. I always start at the top. It's just easier to let gravity do the work for painting. Even when you're doing a window, this way, this way, this way, this way. That's how I do it every single time. Systematic. So same thing with doing a corner. I always go left to right, top to bottom. So if I'm up here, I bend it, and if you guys could see it closely, I mean, you know, you just draw that line. I hate to, it's that simple. No, I do this wall because I'm doing this wall. Then I do this wall when I'm going to roll this wall. I don't know if that's that big of a deal though. If you're doing corners, like I would try, you know, corners, you probably could just go here. It depends on how fast you are. I mean, if you're going to, you probably could go all the way down here and then roll this thing out quick and then cut this one and roll it. But if you're going to take a long time, I probably wouldn't.
But you do cut both sides.
Yes. Yep. Oh, God, I have to think. You know, I'm trying to think when the last time I was cutting the inner wall, right? I would actually go here, and then I do the wall. But when I'm looking at our guys' job sites, I don't think they do that. That might not be a, well, but then again, remember, we're going to do a bedroom in about an hour and a half with one coat, another one an hour and a half. So it's not even going to barely dry. You know, but you know, have you ever walked into a house and you see the whole house has been trimmed out and they haven't rolled one wall? That would be bad. Well, I mean, it might turn out fine, but it's not going to be as good as it could be. Does that help? I don't know if it's that big of a deal, actually, but I personally do it. Just it's kind of how I've always done it. Yes.
What am I doing wrong when a roller on both ends you get that?
Too much pressure.
Yep, too much pressure.
Yep. Or it could be a dirty old roller. Might be, you know, because like if you think about where a roller is going to dry out, it's going to dry out on the edge. So the, you know, so the nap. I almost call it like the furry stuff. The nap is going to be a little different in texture as the middle. So if it's brand new roller, it shouldn't be an issue, but it's probably a pressure issue. That's where going back to more thin coats is better, just like a car. You want, like a car, from what I understand, they get like 7 coats of paint, or 5 or 4 or something like that. I don't know if anybody knows that, but I'm pretty sure it's not 2. They just keep building it up. So, yeah.
Do you need to wash walls before they're painted, and if so, what would you use?
Typically, no. If they're dirty, yes. If there's oil in a kitchen, I would say, I would say it's very rare. In fact, if we're going to clean it, or if we're worried about the adhesion, we probably wouldn't. The only reason you would need to clean the wall would be as if it is dirty, and it's not, or if it's not going to adhere. So I would rather sand it than wash it because I don't want to put moisture into drywall or into paint. But however, like in a kitchen, you know, if you need to degrease or something like that, that's definitely important. But typically, no. I would sand to prep.
Regarding back to the ceiling, if you have a water stain on the ceiling and the reason for the water stain has been repaired, can you just paint over it?
Nope. Yeah, well, yes, but it ain't gonna work. It'll work for about 15 minutes. It depends. Well, first of all, disclaimer: it depends on how strong the water stain is. If it's really, really, really faint and you can barely see it to begin with, you might get away with it. But why? You know, you might as well just go buy a can of Kills and then spray over it and seal it in. You're going to need to use a primer. Oil is always going to be better than a latex, but usually you can get that in a can if it's just one spot. But you want that to, you definitely got to seal it before you put the paint on because it'll bleed right through. Water is brutal. Yep. And then we'll go back.
I'm going to be painting a room that has a slanted ceiling like this.
Yep.
And I'll just be painting the walls. So where they meet, I'm concerned with that line. Could I tape the ceiling?
Are you going to be painting the ceiling and the walls?
No, just the walls.
Just the walls.
Could I put tape on the bottom and do for the line, or do I just, is it?
You can, but I would challenge you not to. Because it's going to take you longer to tape it. Is the ceiling popcorn?
No.
Okay, well then it makes it easier to tape if you wanted to. But I'm just thinking, paint's gonna go, okay, like if it was the other way around, I would probably tape the walls because you got a greater chance that paint would run onto the walls. Although I seriously would be very leery of that anyway, because gravity is gonna pull that paint around that tape. It's likely that it could happen. But if you're only doing the walls, not the ceiling. Yeah, I would just cut it. Cutting it is the term for trimming out.
Because I'm thinking I have to have a steady hand if there's a long line across the whole room.
Well, no, you just have to, all you have to do is, because you can cut a straight line for 4 inches, right? All you got to do that 100 times, you just cut it here, you can stop, and then do it again. I mean, ideally you want to go as long as you can, but remember, gravity's your friend in this case. And then also, there is a line. Even though it's vaulted, it may not be as distinct as, a 90-degree angle. Yeah, but I mean, even, there's usually, use that line, because the interesting thing about, the brush is the brush, although very thick here, when you bend it, it becomes extremely small, right? So you can cut it like a pencil, right? I mean, the actual edge can be very, very, very tight. It does not have to be.
I haven't looked at it closely, so the corner, what I do, the middle of where the bend, or a little above, or a little below, I suppose.
I would just go to the edge, to the...
Where the old paint is.
Oh, well, yeah, that's a great question, because, if, sometimes we end up looking like we made a mistake by following somebody else's cut line, right? Like, oh, you got paint on the ceiling. It's like, yeah, well, you had the old paint on the ceiling, so would you rather see white, beige, and then blue, You can't, go, well, ideally, the homeowner knows this. Sometimes they're not there, but we'll just tell them, like, hey, by the way, I'm going to cover up the blue, but I'm going to go on your ceiling just a little bit, but you'd rather have that, right? I would just carefully do it all the way across,
Mistake and get some on the ceiling.
If you have a rag on you, sometimes you can wipe it off that fast.
You don't pop on the ceiling.
No, probably not. It's going to stick. Kind of depends on the ceiling, but yeah, I mean, you can try that. One other question here, right?
I know it's interior painting, but I have a question on the land down.
Oh, okay.
Railing, and I've been told that you have to wait 3 days after it rains to start the painting. Is that kind of time or is that,
Not necessarily. See, when we power wash, we usually give it 48 hours. So yeah, I guess you'd wait the 3rd day or the 2nd day, but it really depends on the weather. Like, for example, if it's humid and it doesn't actually dry, then yeah, I would give it a little extra time. If it's 90 degrees and dry, you could probably do it the next day, but that's not. I wouldn't chance it. I'd wait. I think it's more important, especially if you're using an oil stain, to not have water or rain or somebody walking on it for 2 days after is more important. There's more likely that something's going to happen afterwards than before. Oh, you're painting the railings. Oh.
already done skiing, but
Oh, now you're going to paint the railings? Yeah, as long as it's a couple days, like wait 48 hours. As long as it's dry, you're fine. Make sure you prime it. And if it's a horizontal surface, just plan on doing it every year anyway, because it's going to peel. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, people say, how come this is peeling? I go, you look, I'm a painter. I know what I'm doing. I work on my own, and it peels every year. But then I got some customers, they can go 5 years. Like, it's just it's horizontal, so the water, the snow, everything's hitting it. Sometimes it'll last 5 years. For some people, it depends a lot about the wood. It's the same product, the same painter, same process. Not without looking, yes, higher sheen. And if you guys ever, obviously interior is something that I can teach people, and they can, because a lot of people do it themselves. So this is a real, a lot of our customers do their own interior. And when they do, or if they do their own exterior for that matter, you could just consider you guys all customers of ours. When you go to Sherwin-Williams, it's a little easier than Hirschfield's. Just tell them you're one of our customers. you want to use our discount. You're providing the paint, even though you're providing the labor too, but they'll usually give you our discount. We have thousands of customers who buy on our account every year, and it helps all of us. Because the more paint that's bought as a part of TruNorth, the better discount we'll all get next year. So it helps us. I mean, you'll have to pay for it. You can't charge to our account, but feel free to do that. Our Sherwin-Williams rep loves it. Hirschfield's, you could try, but they may push back a little bit. They may have to call me, or they may, I don't know, sometimes they just won't do it. Just depends on the store, depends on the person. But Sherwin-Williams, I've never had a problem. So, but Hirschfield's is great too. I mean, they don't have a problem with us. It's just, they don't necessarily do it for anybody walking off the street. So that's how you get paint at our cost. And feel free to tell your friends. If you guys ever do need a contractor for painting, or have a question, or if just have a question, I mean, we do anything from, a bathroom, a bedroom, to Home Depots all across Kansas, right? So like huge range of stuff that we do. We would love to be your contractor. But if you ever have a question on how to do something, we're pretty passionate about people doing it right. So like we have no problem saying, even if we know you're not going to hire us, that's okay. Just say, how do I do this? Because we'd rather have you do it right than go, I really screwed up, I need you to fix this. Because it's harder for us to fix it too, like if it's not done right the first time. So if you guys are ever interested down the road, I do have some flyers here. So I'll put these out. Feel free to grab one on your way out. Any last questions or anything? Oh, there's drawer prizes too. Yes?
You haven't mentioned bear paint.
Okay. Well, bear paint, some people swear by it. I don't know, put it this way, I don't know any professionals that use it. Any. Well, I think the biggest reason?
You don't get the discounts.
No, it's hard. Think about, it isn't better than Sherwin-Williams. It isn't better than Hirschfield's. No, I do not. I absolutely don't think. First of all, there's two main manufacturers in the U.S. ICI, Axel Nobel, and Sherwin-Williams. Axel Nobel is way bigger. They make ICI, Glidden, they make all these paints. Sherwin-Williams makes Sears. Sherwin-Williams makes Pratt & Lambert. They make, there's a whole host of companies that they make, Walmart paint. So like people come and say, well, Consumer Reports says Behr is amazing. And I was like, well, yeah, well, it's weird because it also says that Pratt & Lambert is better than Duration, but it's the same thing. And Weather Beater is the same as Weather Perfect, just different label. So how can it be better or worse? So I just kind of take all that with a grain of salt. But the biggest reason professionals don't use it is because it would take too long to get the paint. Think about how hard it is to go into Home Depot and have a retail person who is not a paint expert. That's, they might be moving from hardware to paint, and the next day they're working in lawn and garden. Sometimes, there are some real specialists there, absolutely, but by and large, there isn't as much training in a paint department at Home Depot or Menards or at to where,
Just the opposite. I have better service at home and faster experts at Home Depot,
Yeah.
and I go crazy at Hirschfield's. I can't wait. It takes forever.
Well, I would agree with you on the second part for sure. I think it depends. Yeah, I mean, people can. If you have somebody you trust, go with them. You know what I mean? If you, they make great paint. Like Behr's not a bad product. Just not a lot of people, not a lot of professionals I know buy from. I mean, there are a few, obviously. It's not a paint store. They don't have as much volume. Like I can't call. If I need 100 gallons, I actually, I have certain stores that I go to, because I know they're going to service me better. Even ones that don't even know. I mean, we buy a lot of paint, so we do get the benefit of buying a lot of paint, but we just naturally have better service at a couple of the stores.
And I had a painter who, yes, he was using Hirschfield's then.
Yeah.
So I was wondering why. Now I know.
Yeah, he might get it faster. I don't. At Hirschfield's, it's more of a retail deal, so I don't get the paint as fast there either, but it's great paint.
That wraps it up, Eric.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Awesome.